Well, hello and welcome everyone to the Terminology Leading Practices stream of the SNOMED CT Expo 221. My name is Monica Harry and I am the Director of Content and Mapping at SNOMED International, and I will be moderating today's session. Just a reminder to please use the live Q&A in your AirTouch device to type your questions to the presenter, and all questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation. I'm now pleased to introduce Jacee Robison of 3M, who will be presenting a presentation named Leveraging the SNOMED Machine Readable Content Model, otherwise known as MRCM, for Maintenance of Clinical Value Sets. Jacee, over to you.
Thanks, Monica. As Monica mentioned, my name's Jacee Robison. I'm informaticist on the Health Information Systems team at 3M, talking about how our team leveraged the SNOMED CT machine readable content model for maintenance of clinical. Participants should understand the complexities of maintaining intentional and intentional value sets, learn about the benefits of utilizing CT attributes for improving maintenance and standardization of value sets, and lastly, recognizing key principles from the SNOMED CT machine-readable content model. Before going over the project background between an extensional and intentional value set. Extensional value sets are enumerated lists of codes or concepts. Extensional value sets require manual updating when new concepts are made available. Intentional value sets are algorithmically defined, meaning concepts rule will be included in the value set. This allows for dynamic updating. Once a new concept becomes available, it can be automatically included in the value set. Our team maintained 5,151 extensional value sets for various customer projects. One example of a customer project that these value sets are used for is to suggest relevant education materials that healthcare providers can give to their patients. For example, let's say a healthcare provider orders an MRI of the head for a patient. The healthcare provider would receive some suggested relevant education materials like basic MRI imaging info, such as what to expect and how to prep for the procedure, or information specific to an MRI imaging of the head. Based on this project, you can get an idea of how important it would be to ensure that the value sets stay up to date with newly available concepts. Now, going back to our historical maintenance process, when new SNOMED concepts were released, team members were assigned the new concepts, and using their clinical expertise, they would determine what value sets were applicable and then add the new concepts to all valid value sets. One example of this is if we had the new concept computed tomography of hand, team members would search for potential value sets and then add as they found applicable. This process required a complete manual review of new concepts, which was very resource and time intensive, and at times resulted in missed or inconsistent adding of new concepts to similar value sets. Before we started the process of converting our extensional value sets to intentional value sets, we evaluated the feasibility of leveraging key aspects of SNOMED CT's machine-readable content model and description logic in order to identify and aggregate groups of similar concepts for value sets. We then started our process of converting the value sets. This included 3 phases: rule creation, concept aggregation, and quality assurance. During the rule creation phase, we evaluated the existing value sets and their current concepts. The existing concepts on the value sets were leveraged to help us get the attributes needed to then build the rules. Using a custom internal tool, we gathered sets of definitional attributes and then assigned relational and logical operators. For example, let's look at how we built the rule for the value set rib fracture. The rib fracture value set currently includes multiple concepts with varying types and granularities of rib fracture concepts. It includes open fracture concepts and closed fracture concepts. A majority of the existing concepts in this value set consist of traumatic disorders. The concepts included relational groups containing an associated morphology and finding site. These were then leveraged in the value set rule. Using our custom internal tool, we were able to view all gathered definitional attributes for rib fracture. On the left, you can see the set of attribute types, such as associated morphology, ISA, finding site, and due to. On the right, you can see the set of attribute values, such as fracture, fracture closed, and pathologic fracture, etc. When building the rule, you can see in the top area, we had options to do nesting logic by using the parentheses, specify or, and not, and exclude less than adult, which means if a concept included any attribute type of occurrence with the attribute value of fetal or neonatal, infancy, adolescent, or childhood, those concepts would not be returned. Going back to the rib fracture rule, instead of including each attribute value and attribute type pairing, we used relational operators to subsume attribute value subtypes where applicable. In the rule, you can see the attribute type, attribute value pairings along with the logical operator. The rule would read as follows: concepts with the associated morphology equal to or lesser than fracture. In this instance, the equal to and the less than sign means include fracture and all the subtypes of fracture. And concepts with the finding site equal to or less than bone structure of rib. In this instance, the equal to and less than sign means include the concept bone structure of rib and all the subtypes of bone structure of rib. This rule will now return any concepts that meet this defined rule in the concept aggregation view. Once the rule was complete, the concept aggregation was reviewed by the team. The aggregation view shows concepts on the left that were existing on the value set, but did not meet the defined rule. On the right, concepts are shown that meet the defined rule, but are not currently included in the value set. Let's take a look again at the rule for rib fracture. We can see that the current rule will return all concepts that have the associated morphology of fracture and all the subtypes of fracture, and concepts that have a finding site of bone structure of rib and all subtypes. Here is shown the concept aggregation. Here is how the concept aggregation changes if adjustments to the rule are made. When we switch the relational operator to equal to, now concepts with the associated morphology of fracture will return. Here is the newly aggregated list of concepts. On the left, you will notice the concepts that are currently on the value set, however, are not being captured by the rule because the morphologic abnormality for those concepts is fracture closed, which is a more specific subtype of fracture. Here is how the concept aggregation changes when we revert the rib fracture rule back to its original form and then remove a previously existing concept. For this example, we removed fracture of 4 ribs. On the right, you will notice that the concept fracture of 4 ribs is captured by the rule, but not currently included in the value set. Team members would evaluate the concepts in this aggregation view and choose to add or remove codes or continue editing the rules to better specify the value set and its aggregated codes. After the rule creation and concept aggregation were complete, the value set would be evaluated by another team member. If no consensus was reached regarding the rule and/or concepts to include or exclude, a third team member would participate in the final review. Value sets are evaluated and revised to adhere to the definition and intention of the value set during each subsequent SNOMED CT standard release. When a new SNOMED CT edition is released, all value sets are automatically expanded against the latest version and compared against the previous value set to show all differences. In summary, the results of this translation process helped us convert our 5,151 extensional value sets to intentional value sets. By implementing this new process, we were able to reduce the number of value sets requiring review and reduce the amount of new concepts needing review. Automating this process also showed a decrease in the level of effort needed for us to review these value sets in comparison to the manual review, where we had to review each new concept and value set. In conclusion, this project allowed for a significant reduction in the level of effort required to review new concepts. The new process also enhanced the aggregation and suggestion of relevant concepts, which resulted in more accurate and consistent value set curation. We did encounter some difficulty creating the rules when concepts within the value set belong to differing hierarchies, when concepts did not include any defining attributes or concepts did not include consistent defining attributes, and when value sets included concepts that pertain to very specific use cases. These cases made creating a rule difficult. In order to account for these types of situations, we created rules by utilizing the most common proximal parent concepts, and also we use specific keywords from the SNOMED fully specified name in the rule building. One last thing to keep in mind, users may have heard about a plan to transition to a more frequent delivery schedule for the releases. Having this sort of programmatic approach of maintaining value sets can make that process more manageable and less burdensome. Thank you for your attention and participation in the session. Here is our contact information if you have any further questions. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate your presentation, and just again a reminder that Jacee is with 3M, and we very much appreciate your participation in the Expo. Thanks. Can I ask that attendees give us a moment to, while we switch over from our pre-recorded sessions content, so that Jacee can address the questions that you've been submitting live. And also note this session will be available on the event platform for the next 3 months. Thank you. Well, thanks again, Jacee. That was a really good presentation, very interesting. And the use of ref sets is increasing ever more among our implementers. We know this for sure. So that was really helpful. Thank you. I'd like to remind people that there's a live Q&A session now. You can submit your questions using the feature in the on-air. Your feature will look different from mine, but you can ask questions and I will present them to Jacee. So first question is coming up from Alistair Kenworthy. And so I just have to copy and paste because the text is really small in the system. And I'm sorry, I have to move over to my own machine and make it a bit bigger so I won't say it. What was the hardest thing about this? That's a good big general question. Maybe there's more than one thing that was difficult.
Yeah. Thanks, Alistair, for the question. I think the hardest thing we kind of encountered was kind of that learning curve in actually writing and creating the rules. We didn't want to make the rules too specific to where in our concept aggregation we weren't getting we were getting too constrained of concepts returning. And then on the flip side, we didn't want to be too general in our rule, where we were getting things in our concepts in our concept aggregation view that didn't fit the use case of the value set. So I would say that was probably the hardest thing. And then also when we had value sets that included concepts that crossed into different hierarchies. One that comes to mind is we had a value set of stroke, and then trying to differentiate between non-hemorrhagic and then hemorrhagic, just where they cross into those different hierarchies. It was difficult. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Another question coming in is, did your team utilize VSAC at all while curating the value sets?
So we do have team members that participate and follow those outside organizations like VSAC, but for our value sets, we didn't utilize VSAC just because of the nature of how specific our customers' use cases were.
Okay. And I see another one. Are your value sets publicly released? Can people get access to them?
We do have some value sets that we release publicly. We have been releasing some value sets that that surround like COVID-19. So we do have those available, and you can contact any one of us on that last slide, and we can let you know where to find those on our website. And as far as the customer value sets, we don't have those publicly available, as they're proprietary value sets for the customer.
Thank you. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Feel free to type question in there. Not seeing anything else coming in at this time, so that just leaves me to say thank you once again, Jacee, and very much appreciate your presentation. Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
And a reminder again that this will be the presentations available on the platform for the next 3 months. And if you have any questions, you can email Jacee directly, or me. You never know. I might have an answer to something. Thank you.